what I'm fascinated by, which is that an ordinary person who goes traveling, and what if something happens to you and you're in a place that you don't speak the language, you don't know anybody, there's no one you can really trust, there's no familiar person that you know has your back, but you are somehow drawn into a mystery, a crime of some sort. Hi everybody, belated Happy New Year. I've been wanting to do this video since the beginning of January when I got back from visiting my mother in Taiwan for Christmas. For those of you who are on my newsletter, you'll have already heard my big news, but I thought it would be nice to do a video as well for those who might have missed it, or maybe you're just following me on YouTube. Life just goes by so quickly, doesn't it? Like when you're 8 going on 9, a whole year seems to take forever. And then when you're, I don't know, 48 going on 49, it's like you blink and suddenly you're 50. And in my case, it was more like a decade had gone by so quickly. When I was nearing my 40th birthday, which was the last big milestone, that was when I was first starting, approaching this whole being a full-time author. And I never imagined, in my wildest dreams, I'd be here now doing what I'm doing. So I'm very, very, very grateful for that. It's always that time of year when everyone's like making New Year's resolutions or, thinking about what you're going to do with your life. And in my case, I recently had a big birthday. So I suppose it's that kind of big milestone birthday that you always start, you have all those thoughts like, oh my God, what am I doing with my life? Life is slipping away and that sort of thing. And to be perfectly honest with you, I think I've been thinking a lot of things anyway, because, even as you lead up to a milestone birthday, you start having those kind of thoughts. But I think partly I've been pushing it away. I didn't really want to admit it, even to myself. It's only been in the last few years, I feel like, gradually things have got harder and harder for me. Like, when I sat down to start a new book, the ideas didn't come so quickly and easily. I write by hearing voices, so it's a little bit like I have a little movie or a little radio playing in my head, and I can hear the literally someone, almost like someone reading a story. I just literally almost like transcribe the voice in my head, but it only works if I can hear it. And so unfortunately, as I was trying to write, the next Oxford Tea Room Mystery or the next one of either Bewitched by Chocolate or English Cottage Garden Mysteries, I was just really struggling to hear those voices. I couldn't tune in. I couldn't, it would just be blank. It would be like, as I said in my newsletter, it was like static. And it was a very frustrating process. And because I was able to do it so easily before, I got more and more frustrated with myself. Things get difficult, you just work harder at it. You push yourself harder because you just have to get through it. And, if you're not, you're just being lazy or something. And so I really, really almost like flayed myself to try and do what I was convinced I should be able to do. And it just made everything more and more of a torturous process, I suppose. And for me, setting is always the big inspiration. So when I go to a place or have lived in a place that I feel has stories, that's when I really want to write a story set there. I get that feeling like, oh, this place would make such a good setting for a story. And then my mind starts going into overdrive and I imagine things happening there. So unlike some other authors who maybe start with a character or a hook, like a situation, I always start with the setting. And I think that's why, for example, the Oxford Tea Room Mysteries was my life as a student there, and then later living there. It was life in the colleges, it was life in the Cotswolds villages that I used to visit. It was the setting that gave rise to the stories. And I suppose in a way, maybe not to say, of course, I mean, there's still loads of stories, that could be set there, but maybe for me, I think, I'd explored the settings as much as I was able to, especially because I wasn't living there anymore. Maybe if I continued living there, I think I would have got fresh inspiration because more things would have been happening for me there. But because I was no longer living there and hadn't been for 20 years now, all I had were my memories, and I suppose I maybe in a way wrung my memories dry. I'm very lucky to do quite a lot of travel. I've lived in a lot of different countries, but I also still travel regularly. And so I suppose, you're exposed to lots of other settings and culture. I had new inspiration. I had new things coming to me from all the places I was visiting. And I would come back and I would always think, oh, I really want to set a story, here, or this amazing Gothic church that I went to with this secret chamber underneath, that would be so cool for a story. And so I would come back from traveling and always have ideas like that. And then I would squash them down because I would think, oh no, I can't, because I've got to write the next Oxford Theatre mystery, or, you know, whatever, because I know I had readers who wanted the next book in that series. And I hate disappointing people. You know, I've always, I mean, I'm the firstborn child in a family. I've always been the dutiful daughter. It was my duty to like make sure that everything was done as it should. And I always, you know, wanted to live up to expectations. And so I find it very, very hard if I know people have expectations of me not to fulfill them, or I feel very guilty if I'm not fulfilling them, and to put my own needs first. And so I think for a long time I resisted this kind of shift in me, because I kept thinking, no, I can't, I've got a duty to my readers. And unfortunately, eventually, I suppose, you know, your brain, the creative brain anyway, just takes over and decides, nope, that's it. I wanted to write the next Oxford Theatre mystery. My January resolution last year was to get the next written by summer. And of course, summer came and I still hadn't written a word. I couldn't hear anything. It was just completely silent in my head. I was getting more and more desperate. And then I thought, okay, well, never mind. I'll work, you know, by autumn, something will come. And of course, autumn came and nothing happened. And by then I was preparing to go to the big author conference in called Author Nation in Las Vegas. Then I had this idea. I thought, okay, if setting is the thing that drives me, maybe what I should do is go to Oxford for a few days just before the conference. I could change my flights, and rather than fly from Australia across the Atlantic to the US, I could go the other way, you know, from across Europe. It's a longer way, and so I did that. I visited my old college. I wandered around all the streets. I went to, you know, I tried to just try and get that feeling back as much as I could. But unfortunately, it just didn't work. It's a bit like trying to force it. You know, it's a bit like when you try to tickle yourself or something like that. It's like the more you try and feel it, the less it, you know, you want to manufacture that feeling, the less it'll come. I was very depressed, to be honest, leaving Oxford. I mean, I was excited to go to the conference, and I came home from the conference and I kept thinking, what do I do? What do I do? I have to write the next Oxford Theatre mystery. And I talked about it with my husband, who, you know, as you know, is the most amazing man. He's the most supportive kind of partner that, you know, anyone could ask for, but especially an author. And he has to put up with a lot from me. And he said to me, well, do you have to? Like, have you ever given thought, you know, to the fact that you don't have to write the next read, that it's something you're forcing on yourself? So coming back from Christmas and, you know, with the start of a new year, I've made my decision, really. I feel like I need to stop forcing myself to do that, and to allow myself, I suppose, the grace, and to let myself just follow my muse, I suppose, for a while. I've been, you know, shutting her, like squashing her and sort of banging her and squashing her away for so long. I think it's time to let her, you know, find her wings a little bit and fly where she wants to. I guess so my big announcement is that I'm going to take a break from Cozy Mysteries for a few years. I'm not giving it up entirely, so don't worry. Those of you I know who love the existing series, you know, don't be upset. It's not like I'm never going to write another Oxford Theatre mystery or you know, even another English Cottage Garden mystery. The Bewitched by Chocolate series is complete for the time being, so I wasn't planning to add any more to that. My plan is to just let myself write these stories that I've wanted to write, and so they'll be called broadly destination thrillers, because they'll be set in a foreign, beautiful foreign destination. Maybe not foreign to everybody, but generally speaking, but with danger and mystery lurking underneath. It's going to be a very immersive, authentic experience of traveling to that place and then having an exciting mystery and more of a thriller, I suppose, because it's less about finding who done it and more about finding out the truth, and then maybe, you know, being in danger for your life because you know something that people want to silence you for. The stories are very much, you know, what I'm fascinated by, which is that an ordinary person who goes traveling, and what if something happens to you and you're in a place that you don't speak the language, you don't know anybody, there's no one you can really trust, there's no familiar person that you know has your back. But you are somehow drawn into a mystery, a crime of some sort. They're not a whodunit, so unlike the Cozy Mysteries, they're not, you know, a group of people in a small village, and it's always the same village, and it's not like 5 suspects and you have to work out who did it. It's more like sometimes you might know who did it, or you might think you know who did it, but you can't believe it because that person seems to be your best friend, or a member of your family, or, you know, a man that you might be in love with, that you think, you know, is a good man, and so you don't know what to think. You have the evidence saying one thing, but your, you know, instincts say something else, and just what is true. It's that sort of creeping unease and suspense, and you're not quite sure if things are you know, if you're just imagining it, or if things are really slightly suspicious and sinister. So they won't be as light-hearted, I suppose, in a way, as the cozy mysteries. They won't be scary or violent or bloody or gory, anything like that. So, I mean, I don't tend to write those kinds of books, but they're obviously a bit darker than the cozy, and they won't be so humorous in a sense that, you know, they're not about little old ladies sneaking into people's bedrooms to snoop around, that sort of thing. There is obviously, I always have a bit of humor in my books. They are still stories where by the end, you know, a sense of justice and everything is put right in the world. So, I don't want to tell you too much without just spoiling the books. Don't worry, they're not going to be the kind of story where you finish and, you know, and you feel like, oh, it was all so dark and depressing. They will be set in beautiful locations, beautiful international locations, where I hope that you'll be able to experience some of it with me, because I love being able to bring a setting alive for my readers, and hopefully to, you know, for you to also perhaps experience and learn a bit about a place that you haven't been or would like to go. Maybe you have been, but it'll take you back there. There'll be a lot about the history, possibly the history, or maybe the mythology. You know, I love mythology and legends and things like that. Definitely the food, because I love my food. And yes, there will probably be animals, because I love animals. And so you won't, you know, the cats and other animals won't be going away, although they won't be quite in the same, they won't be like a feline sidekick like in a cozy mystery. But, you know, they will be realistic to the setting. To be honest with you, I have been writing something. So, because this was a story that would not shut up, and I really had to write it. It kept nagging at me. So 2 years ago, I had an idea for this story, and it was set in a place that I've been wanting to go ever since I was a teenage girl. So it's set in Crete. And Crete, for me, it's always had that kind of mystique about it. And I'd been desperate to visit ever since, you know, I was 14. And I had an idea for a story set there. And I decided for my 50th birthday, I would have a book research trip to go to Crete and to research the story that I've been desperate to write. And so when I came back to Crete, I was full of all the things I really wanted to write about, you know, all the story ideas I had. I had been working on that book, but I hadn't finished it. It was just something I was dabbling with on the side. And so when I was thinking seriously for the first time, I gave myself permission to think, well, maybe I don't have to write another cozy mystery. I can just, you know, write what I really want to write right now, and put a cozy aside for a bit. It all sort of just poured out of me, really. It's going to be set in a small fishing village on the south coast of Crete, which is very remote. And it's surrounded by mountains and gorges on one side, and then by the beautiful blue Mediterranean Sea on the other. And I love settings like that, because it's wild and rugged and sort of untouched in a way by man. And yet, you know, there's like, it's beautiful, but also at the same time potentially dangerous. And there's always like something under the surface. I've got loads more to tell you about my new book, but this video's gone on for ages already, so I'm going to save that for a future video. Until next time, bye!